Chapter 27. Avoiding Errors. Most common errors can be easily corrected once they're spotted. In this chapter, you will learn to fix sentence fragments, fix run-on sentences, fix comma splices, make verbs and pronouns agree with subjects, fix shifts, use modifiers correctly, place modifiers correctly, fix fragments. Fragments are incomplete sentences. They are punctuated to look like sentences, but they lack a key element, often a subject or a verb, or else a subordinate clause or phrase. Remember that every sentence must have a subject and a complete verb, and that a subordinate clause cannot stand alone as a sentence. Ask these three questions when you are checking for sentence fragments. Does the sentence have a subject? Except for command sentences need subjects. Jane spent every cent of credit she had available and then applied for more cards. Does the sentence have a complete verb? Sentences require complete verbs that end in ing must have an auxiliary verb to complete. Ralph keeps changing majors. He's trying to figure out what he really wants to do after college. If the sentence begins with a subordinate clause, is there a main clause in the sentence? Even though Seattle is cloudy much of the year, no American city is more beautiful when the sun shines. Which is one reason people continue to move there? Use these strategies for turning fragments into sentences. Incorporate the fragment into an adjoining sentence. Incorrect. I was hooked on the game, playing it constantly, day and night. Correct. I was hooked on the game, playing it constantly, day and night. Add the missing element. If you cannot incorporate a fragment into another sentence, add the missing element. Incorrect. I was hooked on the game, playing it constantly, day and night. Correct. I was hooked on the game, playing it constantly, day and night. Incorrect. When aiming for the highest returns and also thinking about the possible losses. Correct. When aiming for the highest returns, investors also should think about possible losses. Fix run-on sentences. Run-ons jam together two or more sentences, failing to separate them with appropriate punctuation. The problem is that the two main clauses are not separated by punctuation. A period should be placed after was, and the next sentence should begin with a capital letter. I do not recall what kind of printer it was. All I remember is that it could sort, staple, and print a packet at the same time. I do not recall what kind of printer it was. Straight line. All I remember is that it could sort, staple, and print a packet at the same time. I do not recall what kind of printer it was. Period. All I remember is that it could sort, staple, and print a packet at the same time. Use a three-step strategy to correct all run-on sentences. 1. Identify the problem. If you find two main clauses with no punctuation separating them, you deserve a run-on sentence. 2. Determine where the run-on sentence needs to be divided. 3. Choose the punctuation that indicates the relationship between the main clusters. Bold black equals subject green type equals verb. Internet businesses are not bound to specific locations or old ways of running a business. They are more flexible in allowing employees to telecommunicate and determine their working hours. Internet businesses are not bound to specific locations or old ways of running a business. They are more flexible in allowing employees to telecommute and determine their working hours. Insert a period. Internet businesses are not bound to specific locations or old ways of running a business. Period. They are more flexible in allowing employees to telecommute and determine their working hours. Insert a semicolon and possibly a traditional word. Internet businesses are not bound to specific locations or old ways of running a business. Therefore, they are more flexible in allowing employees to telecommunicate and to determine their working hours. Insert a comma and a coordinating conjunction. And, but, or, nor, or, sore, yet. Internet businesses are not bound to specific locations or old ways of running a business, comma. So, they are more flexible in allowing employees to telecommute and to determine their working hours. Fix. Comma splices. Comma splices occur when two or more sentences are incorrectly joined by a comma. A comma should not link two clauses that could stand on their own. Most of us were taking the same classes, comma. If someone had a question, comma, we would help all out. Use one of these strategies to fix a comma splice. Change the comma to a period. It didn't matter that I worked in a windowless room for 40 hours a week on the web. I was exploring and learning more about distant people and places I had never heard of before. Correction. Week period on. Change the comma to a semicolon. A semicolon indicates the close connection between the two main clauses. It didn't matter that I worked in a windowless room for 40 hours a week. On the web, I was exploring and learning more about distant people and places than I had ever before. Correction. Week. Semicolon. Insert a coordinating conjunction. Some comma splices can be repaired by inserting a coordinating conjunction, and, but, or, nor, so, yet, for, to indicate the relationship of the two main clauses. Digital technologies have intensified a global culture that allows us affects us in large and small ways, yet their impact remains poorly understood. Make one of the main clauses a subordinate clause. Community is the vision of a great society, trimmed down to the small size of a town. It is a powerful metaphor for real estate developers who sell a mini utopia along with a house or condo. Correction. Because community. Make one of the main clauses a phrase. Community. The vision of a great society trimmed down to the size of a small town is a powerful metaphor for real estate developers who sell a mini utopia along with a house or condo. Make verbs agree with subjects. A verb must match its subject. If the subject is singular, I, you, he, she, or it, the verb must take a singular form. If the subject is plural, we, you, they, the verb must take a plural form. Therefore, verbs are said to agree in number with their subjects. This single rule determines subject-verb agreement. When two subjects are joined by and treat them as a compound, plural, subject, the teacher and the lawyer are headed west to start a commune. When two nouns linked by and are these modified by each or every, these two nouns are likewise treated as one singular object. Each day and night brings no new news of you. If a subject is joined by or, either, or neither, nor make the subject verb agrees with the subject closest to the verb. Is it the sky or the mountains that are blue? Is it the mountains or the sky that surrounds us? Check for the agreement when words come between the subject and the verb. When you check for subject-verb agreement, identify the subject and the verb. Ignore any words that could come between them. Students is a plural, and read is a plural. Subject and verb agree. Incorrect. Students reads more than suburban students. Correct. Students at inner city Washington High read more than our suburban students. The plural noun sharks that appears between the subject, the whale shark, and the verb feeds does not change the number of the subject. The subject is singular and the verb is singular. Subject and verb agree. Incorrect. The whale shark feed on plankton. Correct. The whale shark, the largest of all sharks, feeds on plankton. Make pronouns agree. Because pronouns usually replace or refer to other nouns, they must match those nouns in number and gender. The noun that the pronoun replaces is called its antecedent. If pronoun and antecedent match, they are in agreement. When a pronoun is close to the antecedent, there is usually no pronoun. Maria forgot her coat. The band members collected their uniforms. Pronoun agreement errors often happen when the pronouns and the nouns they replace are separated by several words. Incorrect. The players, exhausted from the double overtime game, picked up his sweats and walked towards the locker rooms. Careful writers make sure that pronouns match their antecedents. Correct. The players, exhausted from the double overtime game, picked up their sweats and walked towards the locker rooms. Agreement with every, each, or, and nor. Words that begin with any, some, and every are usually singular. Incorrect. Everybody can choose their roommates. Correct. Everybody can choose his or her roommate. Use singular pronouns for antecedents preceded by each or every. Correct. Every male cardinal and warbler arrives before the female to define its territory. Use a pronoun that agrees with the nearest antecedent when compound antecedents are joined by or nor. Incorrect. Either the Ross twins or Sue should bring their iPods. Correct. Whether Sue or the Ross twins should bring their iPods. When you put the plural twins last, the correct choice becomes the plural pronoun their. Fix shifts. Unintentional shifts in tense, voice, person, or number often distract readers. Shifts in tense. The shift from present tense looks to the past tense relied is confusing. Correct the mistake by putting both verbs in the present tense. Incorrect. While Brazil looks to ecotourism to fund rainforest preservation, or other South American nations relied on foreign aid. Correct. While Brazil looks to ecotourism to fund rainforest preservation, other South American nations rely on foreign aid. Shifts in voice. Watch for unintended shifts from active, I ate the cookies, to passive. The unexpected shift from active, toppled, to passive were broken. Forces readers to wonder, was it a sudden storm or something else that broke the windows? Awkward. The sudden storm toppled several trees and numerous windows were shattered. Correct. The sudden storm toppled several trees and shattered numerous windows. Shifts in person and number. Sudden shifts from third person, he, she, it, one, to first, I, we, or second, you, are confusing to readers and often indicate a writer's uncertainty about how to address a reader. Incorrect. When one is reading a magazine, you often see several different type fonts used on a single page. Correct. When reading a magazine, you often see several different type fonts used on a single page. Use modifiers correctly. Modifiers come in two varieties, adjectives and adverbs. Adjectives answer the questions which one, how many, and what kind. Adverbs answer the questions how often, to what extent, when, where, how, and why. Comparative modifiers weigh one thing against another. They either end in or are preceded by more. Road bikes are faster on pavement than mountain bikes. The more courageous juggler tossed flaming torches. Superlative modifiers compare three or more items. They either end in est or are preceded by most. Road bikes are faster on pavement than mountain bikes. The more courageous juggler tossed flaming torches. April is the hottest month in New Delhi. Wounded animals are the most ferocious. Absolute modifiers are words that represent an unvarying condition and thus aren't subject to the degrees that comparative and superlative constructions convey. Common absolute modifiers include complete, ultimate, and unique. Absolute modifiers should not be modified by comparatives, more plus modifier or modifier plus or superlatives, most plus modifier or modifier plus minus est. Avoid errors in comparisons. Do not use a suffix or est and more or most. Incorrect. The service at Jane's restaurant is more slower than the service at Alfonso's. Correct. The service at Jane's restaurant is slower than the service at Alfonso's. Make sure to name the elements being compared if they are not clear from the context. Unclear comparative. Mice are cuter. Clear. Mice are cuter than rats. Unclear comparative. Nutria are the creepiest. Clear. Nutria are the creepiest rodents. Place modifiers carefully. Words such as almost, hardly, even, just, merely, nearly, not, only, and simply are called limiting modifiers. Although people don't often play fast and loose with their placement in everyday speech, limiting modifiers should also go immediately before the word or words that modify in your writing. Words. Limiting modifiers. Immediately before the words they correct. Incorrect. The gross domestic product only gives one indicator of economic growth. Correct. The gross domestic product gives only one indicator of economic growth. Many writers have difficulty with the placement of only. Like other limiting modifiers, only should be placed immediately before the word it modifies. The word only modifies one in the sentence, not gross domestic product. Connect modifiers clearly to the words they modify. A dangling modifier does not seem to modify anything in a sentence. It dangles, unconnected to the word or words it is presumably intended to modify. When still a girl, My father joined the army. It sounds like father was once a girl. The problem is that the subject, I, is missing. When I was still a girl, my father joined the army. Dangling modifiers usually occur at the head of a sentence when a subject is implied but never stated. Incorrect. After lifting the heavy piano up the stairs, the apartment door was too small to get it through. Correct. After lifting the piano up the stairs, we discovered the apartment door was too small to get it through. Summary for editing for errors. Fix fragments. Incorporate the fragment into an adjoining sentence. Add the missing element. Fix run-on sentences. 1. Identify the problem. If you find two main clauses with no punctuation separating them, you have a run-on sentence. 2. Determine where the run-on sentence needs to be divided. 3. Choose the punctuation that indicates the relationship between the main clauses. Fix comma splices. Change the comma to a period. Change the comma to a semicolon. Insert a coordinating conjunction. Make one of the main clauses a subordinate clause. Make one of the main clauses a phrase. Make verbs agree with subjects. When you check for subject-verb agreement, identify the subject and the verb. Ignore any words that come between them. Make pronouns agree. Words that begin with any, some, and every are usually singular. Use plural pronouns for antecedents joined by and. Use singular pronouns for antecedents preceded by each or every. Use a pronoun that agrees with the nearest antecedent when compound antecedents are joined by or, nor. Fix shifts. Watch for sudden shifts in tense, voice, person, or number, and edit them out of your writing unless you are certain that their purpose is clear and evident to your readers. Use modifiers correctly. Do not use both a suffix, or ist, and more or most. Be sure to name the elements being compared if they are not clear from the context. Place modifiers carefully. Place limiting modifiers immediately before the words they modify. Modifiers should be clearly connected to the words they modify, especially at the beginning of the sentence.